I'm very much in favor of better regulation and more regulation for international financial flows internationally. And this is in the interest of emerging economies. The problem is that in many of the international institutions like the IMF, developing countries do not have as many votes as the countries that are dominant in the IMF.
As you know, in 1944, Bretton Woods system started. So it's a long history, but in Bretton Woods system, its system didn't have the adjustment process. So in the case of China, quota of China is only 4%. It's below the Benelux countries. So it's very unnatural one. However, in order to adjust the new realities, US Congress or another vested interest group don't want to accept such kind of things. So they didn't address the new realities. So new schemes should be presented in order to alter, in order to change the status quo.
So unless there is a major reform of the structure of the international financial system, many of these other plans, for instance, to introduce innovation into the economy, are going to be sabotaged by the failures existing within the system. So in one sense, it seems to me that the issue of international financial reform, and I don't mean Band-Aids, I don't mean, you can't use a Band-Aid to cover up a wound that is gouging out blood, which is what we have, if you want to use that analogy, in the financial system. You have to have a major reform. And that is on the agenda, and you have to get all the nations on board, that is including China. Probably not so difficult to get them on board, probably not so difficult to get all the developing countries on board. But convincing the United States and convincing the Europeans that their system is really at an end and it's got to be reformed is going to be a very difficult task. But that also is unfortunately on the agenda. I would like to be more optimistic about the results of the G20, because I do think the program that China has presented is important and necessary.
I think it has delivered a nice shock to the good, in the positive sense, a shock to the system. I think the reflecting and therefore changing or adjusting governance in the global institutions, traditional institutions, be it the World Bank, be it the IMF, but probably I would also say the United Nations and so. I think all these global institutions has been long overdue. In a way, logically speaking, China has been in a position to do something about it, so it took the initiative and took the initiative to create a new institution. And as we know, close to 60 nations decided to participate. So obviously, many people, many countries feel, more or less in many ways in a similar manner.
So the IMF voting structure does not reflect the changed economic structure in the world. I mean, developing countries do not have as much votes there as they have comparable to the kind of trade that they undertake and comparable to the kind of finance that they're able to produce. So therefore, we are also advocating that the voting weights in the IMF and the large institutions begin to reflect the weight in the economy of these other countries. And this is a reform process that has been started in 2006, but it's going very slowly because the United States Congress is very resistant to accepting the changes in the voting weights. So we are hoping that countries like those who are members of the G20 can convince the US to have a faster rate of changing the voting weights in these international institutions because they are good for the whole world.